Hello and welcome everyone for another show of MEDtalkx being broadcasted live on Pendle Community Radio, WAS 103.1 FM. You can also see us on our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook page. So please do subscribe, interact, ask questions, and we will try to put it forward to our guests. So we have been graced with 3 guests today, not a typical number, but I guess it's because it's a very important topic around fostering. So there are a couple of numbers if you want to get in touch. There is a studio number, which is 01282 723 455. And there is a WhatsApp number, 07522 723 455. Over to you, Fahim.
Thank you, Mehran, and a good evening to all the viewers and listeners tonight for a really special episode on fostering. My thanks to the guests for coming, who are Colin, Chatten, Barry Richardson, and Jane Hillary. Jane Hillary started her life in social work and qualified as a social worker back in 2004, and so is bringing all of that experience to tonight's show. Colin Chatten is a professional foster carer, born in Toxteth, Liverpool, like myself, born in Liverpool, Colin, so we've got an affinity already, and has been doing this for FCA Foster Care Associate since 2005. And he's also been actually doing that with his wife, Sue, and they've looked after 18 different children in that time. So he's got a keen interest in this, and fostering is his passion as well as his career choice. So it's really good to know. And last but definitely not least, we've also got Barry Richardson, who is a foster carer for Lancashire County Council Services and has I'll probably go into how I know Barry later on in the program through a chance meeting. Before we actually start then, let's go to Jane then first. Jane, are you able to tell the audience, please, what it actually is fostering and how is it different to adoption?
Well, the biggest difference between fostering and adoption is that in the case of adoption, the adopter gains parental responsibility, whereas when children are fostered, they may only be fostered for a very short time, maybe a number of days up to a number of years. And actually in those cases, the local authority and parents retain parental responsibility. So it is very different. There is permanence in fostering, but it's that parental responsibility that makes the largest difference in that. So it's actually becoming legally part of another family when we're talking about adoption.
And Jane, I understand there's many different types.
And Colin, moving to you.
Yeah, there's many different types of foster carers. Is that correct, Jane?
Yeah, there's lots of different types of fostering, if you like, but that's because there's lots of different situations where children will need somewhere to stay. And as I said, it could be in very short term, it could be in the longer term. It really depends on what's going on in a family's life and the reason why a child can't remain at home and therefore needs to be looked after. So that can range from, an emergency provision that might be, happen very suddenly within the same day or within a few hours, or it could be in case of a plan. And that can be for any reason. That could even be for maybe someone goes to hospital for some kind of treatment and there is not any family members to care for that child, or it could be around abuse. It could be that a child has some disabilities, so family will receive some short-term care to allow them to have a break. So it really does depend really on what's going on in the family, and that's the thing about fostering. It's unique because we're all unique. So what everybody needs is unique, really.
That's really good. And Colin, coming to you, can you tell us what inspired you to go into fostering?
My wife originally. It was there's many different reasons why people come into fostering, and we came in. First of all, we were going to have more children. That didn't work out. We didn't have more children, and at the time we didn't actually know that much of it about fostering or adoption. To be honest with you, we kind of held them in the same brackets at the time. When we looked into fostering further, we thought that's actually something we can get our teeth into. We can help a lot more children by choosing that route, really. So that's the route we came down. We've never looked back since. Absolutely love it. Yeah.
And Barry, if I come to you, what was your journey?
Well, originally we were going to IVF, and we've got my eldest daughter. She's an IVF baby. We didn't think we could have any more. We were originally looking at adopting because we didn't want it to be an only child. And 10 months later, along came my second daughter. So we were very, very blessed. And as they got a bit older, got to 10 and 8 years old, we decided that we'd like to foster children and give them, a chance in life. So we contacted the local authority, Lancashire County Council, went through the process of being accepted as foster carers for Lancashire County Council, and we've been there ever since. 14 years, going on 15 years now, and we've had quite a few children in our care. We started off as short-term carers. We're now long-term carer for a teenage boy that I have, that Fahim knows very well. And he's been with us 9.5 years, and we have babies as well. And we've had a number of babies over the last few years that we take into care and see them through into adoption. So I've gone through the long term and on the, we've done the short term, we've done the babies into adoption and the bridging like that into a new home, and stay in contact with quite a few kids that we've had in our house, which is really, really nice, because it gives you that sense of, you know that they're okay where they are, they're happy, they're settled, and if you can manage to do everything right and get it right, and in a lot of cases you don't have to keep contact, but it's nice if you do. And some of them children, they just need that from you. The first lad that we had that was adopted, was adopted from us when he was 5, and he's 17 now. And he's got learning disabilities, and we've maintained that contact with him all that time because he needs those roots, and it's lovely. We meet up 3 or 4 times a year, and it's nice to see him. He can ring us whenever he wants. His new, his mum and dad that he's got now are really, really nice, and it gives us up-to-date things. And there's a lot of other children that we've had that, we're still in contact with. So it's lovely. Some of the babies and that. It's really nice to see them growing up in a nice home and thriving.
So listening to that, Jane, it's great to have that kind of passion from both Colin and Barry, and obviously this is something they've continued for many years. Taken on more and more children and tried to support them on their journey. I guess if there is a viewer or a listener watching this as we speak and thinking, I would like to take up fostering, what the kind of steps do they need to take?
Well, they need to be over 21, and they need to have a spare room, and that's important because obviously looked after children need somewhere to stay, when they're with you. But it's about just ringing and having a conversation. And, any fostering organisation, including ourselves, we're open to having that conversation with people. Maybe someone hasn't got a spare room now, but they know they're moving or they've got plans in the future. So it's really about, ringing up. Anybody will be happy to speak to you. And I know certainly we are, to talk to people about the kind of steps you need to take. And quite often people will have that discussion with someone and then go away and prepare themselves, look at moving into the future, the steps they need to take to come back into that. But certainly for a lot of people, they get to that point, they have a spare room, they feel like they've got something to offer. And it's very simple. Give us a ring. We'll talk to you about it and talk you through the process and what you need to do. It's very much, and I'm sure, Colin and Barry will agree with me, it's very much a team effort. So you're not doing it on your own, even through that early process at looking at assessing you and helping kind of draw out the skills and the qualities that you have, which everybody has. They just don't necessarily know it. It's really about pulling those out. We've all got a passion for families and children and helping them achieve their best. And once you get on that roller coaster, if you like, I think it's quite catching to want to do the best and be the best. So that's as basic as it gets, really. Ring up, have a conversation, and then you know where you're heading from there.
I think that's a really important point what Jane's talking about there. In my experience, when I've spoke to people who have potential foster carers and people who may or may not go on to become foster carers, a lot of the time I found that people find the reasons why they can't do it first. I don't know. I mean, I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm gay. All these reasons why people think that they're not going to be able to do it. And until you have that conversation, you're not going to know anyway. And it's important to realise that you can have that conversation. It doesn't mean you then have to continue on that journey. You might find out that it's not your time to do it, or it might not be for you. But until you have that conversation, you're not going to know that. So, I strongly agree with what James just said there. Make the call and have that conversation. You'll find out.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm testament to the fact that you can foster when you've got a family. You can work and have a family. I was working full time when I started fostering, and you can be older and foster, because I'm knocking on the door 66 now, and I've been doing it a good while, and it keeps you young. There's lots of myths surrounding why people think they can't foster, like the guys were saying, and where I am at Lancashire County Council, they've got a process that you go through, and they will see you through that process, and there's people there to help you. There's the support. We've got there is a demand for foster carers at the moment, because in the Lancashire County Council area alone, we've got 2,133 children in care, and 97 of those are from the Asian community, and that's why there's more of a need for a diverse people across the board. It's not just Asian, it's other ethnic minority people as well. And people that think they haven't got the skills, they have got the skills, because they've got the culture, the knowledge of the culture, the knowledge of the language, and this can help. It's very hard placing ethnic minority children in care. It takes longer to place them, because not everybody's a specialist and not everybody can give them that help. I was very lucky because I knew the dietary needs. I was close by to where my foster son was living and going to school, and I convinced the social worker that you give him to me, I'll do everything I can to make sure his life's right, and give him everything I can to make sure he gets his culture and everything. And that's what we've done. And I take him to language lessons, and it's about, putting everything into them, because it's fantastic what you get out of these kids when you put it in. They're coming into care, and the reasons for that are not their fault, and they've got a rocky time. So it's up to you to use your experience and, your parenting skills to help them settle, to make them see it's okay. You've got a support network behind you, like we do at Lancashire County Council. They will share with you, with the social worker team. We've got buddies, we've got an academy. You get financial support, to help the kids, and holiday allowances, birthday allowances. There's lots of things, good things that you can get by just talking to your local authority, these guys in their area, you know what I mean? And there's kids out there. needing help.
I think, Barry, as well, you'll probably agree with me on this, is it's brilliant having that infrastructure around you, isn't it? It's as a foster carer, it's great to know that you've got that kind of support network around you, like with therapists and support groups and trips for the children. But what I do say to any foster carers is that stuff only works if you engage in it. If you buy into that, because it's our responsibility as foster carers. I think Barry was touching on it then, is to utilize whatever skills and whatever you can get around you to help those young people. I mean, if you don't fully understand the young person's culture, it doesn't mean to say you can't understand it. It means it's your responsibility to go find out, and it's as simple as that, really. These barriers can be broken down, but only if foster carers engage.
Isn't it, Colin? Matching is very important, and as obviously said, and Barry, it's about, this is why we need more carers, and obviously Barry touched on that in terms of Lancashire, but certainly in the northwest, there's over 14,500 children who are looked after in the northwest alone. And certainly, as I said before, every child is individual. So what they need is unique and individual, and matching is really important when we're looking at the children that need somewhere to be and the people that we have who are a good match to be able to meet their needs. And certainly there's a lack of foster carers across the northwest, in terms of all ages and ethnicities, backgrounds, single, couple, whatever that is. There's children out there who need them, and certainly, as Colin and Barry said, matching is highly important. But because we've got that gap, it is about looking at what can you provide that child. And going back to what I mentioned before, it's a team approach. Because if it wasn't, foster carers would be doing this on their own without all the professionals. Everybody's got their own skills. Here we have our own skills, but together you make a team. And with all those specialisms, you can help a child, meet their aims, their goals, live holistically and actually achieve things and have a beneficial life. Because everything we do, it's not about now, is it? We're talking about everything we do now helps someone be a holistically rounded adult who can go off and live a really great life by themselves. So everything we do now really is about them. And it's all those things that come together to give children the best chance and the greatest amount of advantages we can give them.
Colin, I want to come to you now. We've had some questions come through, and obviously we've talked about there's a shortage of it. From my knowledge, foster carers get money for doing it. So isn't that a good incentive for getting involved? Or what do you think of the question about getting money through fostering?
Yeah. This is, I make no bones about what I do for a living. I'm a professional foster carer. That's my career choice. But I do, I also like to add on the fact that it's also my passion. And the reason I say that is because I say this that often, so people know me, think it's a bit of a cliche, to be honest with you. I always say, it is challenging. There are times where you find it really, really difficult, and you don't get to go home overnight from your job. So it's a completely different type of career than most career choices. So I don't work anywhere else. So this is my career. This is my choice. But it's too challenging to do for the money alone. Your heart's got to be in it. If you did it for the money alone, to just for a wage, you'd be found out. I think you need to be more dedicated than that. But we couldn't do without that, because like everybody else, our bills need to be paid. We've got to keep a roof over our head. We've got to feed people. So it's a legitimate career, but it's a career where it also needs to be a bit of a call, and I think a bit of a passion. I think there needs to be a little bit of something there anyway in order for you to do that. But it's two things in one. I make no bones about that. It is what it is.
It's a lifestyle, isn't it? Anybody who works with people and families in social care will say the same. It's not about the money. Everybody needs to pay their rent, their mortgage, their bills. But actually, it's more than that. It's the reason why people don't look at their watches when things are going wrong at 5 o'clock and go, oh, well, it's time to go now. You can't do that. These are people's lives. And there's nothing more important than that. that's the key of it, isn't it?
And it can be challenging. I mean, Barry will know it can be. It can be at times. It can be one of the most difficult jobs I've ever picked. It's the most rewarding one as well, And there are thousands and thousands of foster carers that do it every day successfully. So it works. It works if your heart and soul's in it. It works, doesn't it, Barry?
It is. It's just about being passionate about wanting to see these kids achieve, to give them opportunities that they wouldn't have had. And to give them that platform to thrive, and where I am, the area I'm in, Lancashire County Council, the figures I've got, there's around 20 places every week where they're looking for, for carers, and this is why we need more carers. And there's great support. We've got a good fostering team available 24/7. For advice and support. We've got additional support with the Foster Care Academy, mentoring support, community hubs. There's support groups every month. You can buddy up with people if you're a new carer. There's people who'll guide you through stuff, so if you're struggling, I've been there and people give me a call, and it's just, when you've done it a few years, like you have as well, Colin, you give these people that bit of breathing space that when they're starting to panic a little bit, and just guide them through things, really. And it's about working as a team, because we're all in it for the same goal, to give these kids that have had an unfortunate start in life a better future. This is what it's about, and to keep doing it as long as you can, and I absolutely love what I do. And I don't ever want to give it up, I want to just keep going as long as I can, because
they'll have to drag you away kicking and screaming.
I think what Barry is true, though, there's something out there for everyone. Whether you're looking to go to a local authority, where obviously in Lancashire, or coming to someone like us at FCA, everybody is different. Everybody maybe wants something different, and certainly there is. There can be differences in terms of how people want to receive support and how things work. I think certainly, FCA would say in terms of the support we provide, and obviously Colin's here to testify to that, in terms of that 24/7 support, that wraparound service, that team approach that you need. Fostering is not a race. You can't put your head down and just head for the finishing line. You need that support along the way. And that's what we're all there for. Everybody's an expert, including the foster carer. We're all experts in our field, and we come together and provide what's necessary for that child as an individual. And obviously, as Barry said, support groups, activities, mentoring. Certainly Colin is a carer rep, so he provides that level of support as well, and links with carers, as well as buddy schemes, activities. Certainly in FCA we do things like choir competitions and all kinds of unusual things. So it is about, and as Barry said, really the message we're giving, fostering's serious, but childhood has to have some fun in there too. So, and I think we'd all like to say that in terms of providing care for children, whether it's in a local authority or an agency, but actually it's about the individual. It's about, yes, sticking with the serious stuff, the things we need to do, but remembering when you're working with children, when you're caring for children, you have to make childhood fun as well.
No, absolutely. But Jane, I did want to try to raise a point. So the 1989 Children Act, which guides authorities as well as professionals to make sure that matching process, whether it's around religious persuasion, racial origin, cultural identity, because as you said, the number of foster carers are dropping over time, and the number of foster children are increasing, or the demand is increasing, with some arguments saying that there's increasing desire to have people of the BAME community being foster carers. So how does the agency or local authority mitigate that? Because we have to try to put children's, the child's need first.
Yeah.
So how do you approach it?
Well, firstly, people say, where do we need foster carers? Well, in reality, as we both said, all three of us have said, foster carers are needed across the board in the UK. So if someone's listening to this on holiday or whatever, when you go home, if you're interested, think about it. Certainly, everything we look at is about matching the right person to the child. So if you imagine during the process, we'll get to know a foster carer really, really well, know their family, where they live, all of those kind of aspects. And we use that knowledge to match with children that local authorities tell us need to be looked after. And the idea should be that we know them that well, and the information we provide allows that social worker at the other side, who knows the child hopefully well, to look at that information and say, do you know what, I can see that, you know, whoever it is would fit in really well there, that you know, they can meet their needs. I can see how that looks. So it is that two-tiered. It's not just us matching, but the local authority also matches alongside that. And it would be the same for Barry. Those two teams would be looking at that and looking at that match. We don't always have matches. And earlier on, myself and Colin were talking about some of the experiences we had, and certainly years ago as a social worker, I placed a Russian child with foster carers who weren't Russian. The local authority I worked at the time, we didn't have any Russian foster carers. So then it was looking at, okay, what do we need to be aware of? You know, what cultural needs are there we need to consider, dietary needs, all of those kind of things, and ensuring we made those links, we found the information we needed, and we made sure that the foster carer was confident they could do that. Because remember, they're involved in that matching process. You know, they're saying, you're having that conversation, and they're saying, yes, I can do this. Back to that team approach. I might not have it all, but this is what I know, this is what I can do. Where's the other experts to bring that information to me? And that's what it's about, because it is about meeting the needs of that child. So you do have to look at, if there's a gap, how can you match? And it's the same, it would be the same, you know, across boards. But certainly we've had South Asian foster carers who've cared for Vietnamese children, or, you know, children from all walks of life. So it's not just, there's a whole gap really in terms of carers that are needed. I don't think you're ever going to get to a point where you have someone for everyone who just ticks every single box. We're not tick boxes, are we? We're people. So it is about that team approach, coming together, looking at what we need to know, looking at those unique needs, because someone, obviously, their culture, their heritage, whether they have any disabilities, whether they have any learning needs, do they have any medical needs? Certainly medical needs for a child in foster care. We have a number of children who have some significant disabilities, health needs. So it's looking at across the board at all those elements, and then being able to match as much as we can uniquely to that individual child.
About matching, you know, an ideal foster carer to the exact, you know, a perfect match. No match is perfect anyway. You know, the work needs to be done on both sides, for the young people and the, you know, and the foster carer. But I think the point is, for me, is that like I always say, a foster carer, a big part of a foster carer's job is making relationships with other adults as well, other professionals. You know, it's not just about the work that we do with the young people. That's obviously the main part of it, but that doesn't work properly unless you can garner the support around you. And it's our responsibility, if someone's got a different culture than what I was brought up with, to go out and find out what that is. Are there any local groups about? You know, are there any local communities that I can help integrate that child with? You know, if you haven't got everything that it says on a ticky box list, then you make sure you get it for them. You know, and it's just about staying like that all the time, staying one step ahead. And that's how we grow as foster carers anyway. You know, the more we do that, the better we become as foster carers. And in the future, you know, it's a rolling wheel. You know, we learn as much ourselves as what we teach the young people. You know, that's, to me, that's the best way I can describe it, really.
Definitely. And also there's personality in there. You know, there's so much, you know, there's geography in there. There's kind of what is the layout of your house? Have you got a garden? Have you got pets? Are you a noisy household? Are you a busy household? You know, are you out walking the dog at 6 o'clock in the morning? Do you lie in till, you know, 8 o'clock? Different households will suit different children. There's not that many people who like, you know, to lie, the whole house likes to lie until 8. It's not going to be a great match to have someone who's up at 5. So there's a numerous tiny little details that come into looking at a match for a child, and the processes at looking at that, trying to involve children in that match as much as possible as well. You know, it's a really delicate process, but as Colin said there, it comes right back to those relationships, knowing people well, being able to have those conversations and talk it through. How would that look? How would that work? You know, it is. I mean, it's not straightforward. If it was straightforward, then, you know, we'd get it right every time, wouldn't we? All of us. And that doesn't happen. It is about looking at those little tiny things and knowing that as people, we also change and grow. So what for a child at the beginning, or if things change within their family, not their fostering family, you know, in terms of birth relationships, things can change over time too. And we have to be, in terms of that team, certainly the foster carer who's at the front line of everything, is being flexible, being motivated, you know, sticking through things, dealing with some of those challenges that Barry and Colin have already mentioned, the emotional stuff as well, you know, dealing with those and moving forward and doing the best we can, even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Colin, I want to just move on to one point. Obviously, there are challenges with fostering as well. We've heard all the positive things. And there was an all-parliamentary party group actually by Anne Coffey last year. You may have read it. The report was talking about out-of-area placements and children in care who disproportionately go missing more than other children because of their vulnerability. So it's up to over 10%. Is that something that carers should be aware about? And what are the challenges? Because they're quite vulnerable children who go into care. They may have had abuse. I mean, as a carer, how do you deal with that emotional turmoil, the turmoil of the child and the turmoil of having to actually end their fostering relationship at one point?
Well, I mean, it's I can answer that question, but it would be a different answer for every child that I've ever looked after, to be honest with you, because, you know, it all depends on the relationship that you build with the young person. You know, the ideal situation is for you to put yourself, is for you to persuade the young person to put you in a position of trust in their heart. They can confide in you. You know, the reality is, you know, those figures are higher for looked after children. Some of the challenges that we have as foster carers is children might come to us at the age of 14 and 15. You know, I've had that experience before now, where a young person's been missing on a regular basis. It's really difficult. And the truth of the matter is, I wanted to go out 24 hours a day and chase that child around, and it's not not practical. So again, it comes back to us getting as much support as we can. Getting as much advice as we can and listening to the advice. Sometimes you have to take your foot off the gas and let some other professionals take over for you, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's not without its challenges, you know, and we wouldn't be good foster carers if we don't emotionally invest in the young people. And in order to emotionally invest, you'd have to put yourself into a precarious position, really, of you know, you feel their pain. I think Barry will agree with me, and we feel their pain, we feel their worries. You know, we lose sleep at night over these kids. You know, it's the reality of it. You know, I think a really big thing for me I haven't mentioned so far is that is recording. We need to record what happens in our households. You know, it's so important, and it's a little part of fostering. People on the outside looking in don't always notice. We are in a fishbowl, you know, so every kind of parenting task we do is monitored by other people. We get unannounced visits, and they can go upstairs to our bedroom, to any room in the house, you know, and rightly so, because we're looking after other people's children, you know. So it's our responsibility as much as we can to keep them safe, but we have to record everything that happens in our house, and we work together. We work together with our supervising social workers, with the local authority social workers, so that we, you know, ideally we can develop patterns. So when these children are showing signs of risk, hopefully we can spot that. You know what I mean? You know, you can't spot every case of it happening. It's just not. It's impossible, but it's not impossible to aim for that. You know, and that's where we aim for.
Just the structural bits. Certainly, on the whole, we like children to be within 20 miles of where potentially they may be going to school, etc. Because a lot of foster children will continue to go to the same school they went to prior. But as I mentioned before, everybody's an individual. So it may be that there's a request for a child to be outside of area, and that could actually be around their safety. So there's lots of things that come into being here. Certainly children may, as they grow, go missing for a whole range of reasons. But when we have children who come into care who are missing already, then it's working with that team, as Colin said, with the foster carer, with the local authority, sometimes with the police and other services as well, and sometimes family members to look at that and to try and mitigate some of that. And obviously the end goal is for that to stop happening, but with the young person choosing to stop that happening, and investing in other ways. So it's not straightforward, because obviously the reasons can be very different, and it would depend on what the reason for that was in the first place for that behaviour to have started.
Yeah, a lot of the issues that they have are not really of their own making, are they? They're issues that they've been brought up with. They haven't asked for those issues to be bestowed upon them. It's the way of life that that's the only way that they've known. And, in a lot of cases, they only get attention because they've displayed bad behaviour, some children. Not all children are like that. It's just some of them are. And the reason they've done that is because they get no attention for good behaviour, and even the wrong sort of attention for bad behaviour sometimes for some of them is attention. And it's difficult for them. At the end of the day, it's not their fault. They're in a situation that it's not their fault, and effectively they come into your life, into your home, they've lost everything. Everything's been taken away from them. So you have to work extremely hard and be extremely understanding, and not only have the compassion but the patience and the energy to keep going, to get these kids, to guide them down the right path, to try and give them that opportunity, to show them that you can have a life as good as anybody else, and this is why we do it. This is why we're all in it. And this is why people go into social work, because they want to make a difference to those lives that are deprived for whatever reason, and it can be any number of reasons, as we've seen across the board within the news and the media, for years and years. And everybody's trying to work, the authorities, and all the other agencies and everything like that. We're all trying to work to make life better for these children, because it's important that we look after them. They're the future, Otherwise, what is there, And this is why we need more carers,
These are the parents of our future, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, they are,
There's lots of training. It's not just, the Barry and Colin, it's like, right, away you go and do this. There's lots of training and developments around, isn't there? Both, I'm sure, for both of you, in terms of building your skills, your knowledge base, whether it be education, therapeutic childcare. There's lots of different elements that come into that to create a big toolbox that each carer has, that they carry around with them, that grows year on year in terms of their experiences, isn't there? I'm sure, from both your points of view.
It's constant. Yeah. You're always learning. And even though a lot of the same courses come up every year, there might be new information. There might be a new way of doing things. So you do the courses for that reason, because that's going to help you make that child's life better than it was. It's going to help you to understand things better. And as a unit, and I always say we're a blended family, because your life has to blend into theirs and theirs has got to blend into yours, and that's the way forward.
I like that, Tim.
That's what we are. We're a blended family, aren't we? Because we open our doors and we're transparent. We don't promise anything, but we'll give what we can, and we'll do the best we can to give these kids a future. And that is what it's about. My oldest daughter's become a social worker because of the work we've done, and watching us as a fostering family, and she's very passionate about her job as well, so
Just
like
I wanted.
You know,
Sorry, Barry. I was going to try and follow up one of the points you made. You talked about behaviour, on something that appears distressing for either the child itself or the people observing that behaviour. I guess it's fair to say it's an unmet need or a need for that child that we have to try to understand as foster carers or professionals. But the initial, first day, the first week, the first month, how do you develop that trust? And how do you ensure that you start the journey in the right way?
Well, what you're doing is you're giving them chance to breathe for a start. You don't want to be in the face. What you're doing is you're making you've got to try and understand from their position. Most of us, even as adults, could you just lose everything that you've got and go and live in somebody else's home that you didn't know? Extremely difficult. So when you're a child and you're frightened and you've had all this taken away from you, it's about understanding. It's about talking to them in a gentle way. It's about listening to them and empathizing with the situation you've got. And just saying to them, well, you're here until things are sorted out. When it's sorted out between the social services and your family members, and we'll see where it goes from there, and then you're guided by that, and as you go along the way, it's just gradual, and you build up a trust, you build up a relationship, and by doing it and putting yourself into it and understanding that it's very, very difficult for them. Like I said, at our age it's difficult enough. It must be absolutely terrifying when you're like 4 or 5 years old and you've been taken away from everything you know and you're placed with another family. And this is why we work so hard as foster carers and why our backup teams work so hard alongside us with the social workers and all the training we get and the help that we get, and it's constant, and we all help each other, in our own way, in our own areas. I know it's been massive for us, the help that we get and the understanding that you get, and the social workers do listen to you. They ask you about the children because remember, they may come and see them for an hour once a month or once a fortnight, something like that. They're with you 24/7. They want to know about that child. You're the one to tap into. You can tell them, and between you can work out a plan of going forward for these children. And this is why I think it's so important that we get more people understanding that we do need more carers, and you have got skills that you don't realise you've got, like Colin said, until you have that conversation and go and see, and have that chat. And they're very understanding. They will guide you. They will tell you how it goes. I mean, in my area, it's like 8 to 16 weeks to get approved, So it's not like it's a long time.
No.
And you can be doing a wonderful thing and making a difference to somebody's life.
Jane, I want to come in at this stage and ask you, obviously, I was reading up on some of the challenges that the BAME or the BME community have in doing fostering. And it's a sensitive topic, and I'm mindful of everyone who's here. So I don't want to pry too much into it. But one of the issues that was raised was literacy in the English language was a bit of a barrier, because it's not just filling in the forms and so on. Can you help maybe allay if that's an anxiety for someone listening in tonight who may not have English as a first language? Are they still able to be an adequate foster carer? Can they get through the hurdles?
I think we have a wide range of foster carers, and for some of those, English is not the first language. It's about being able to record, as Colin says, and have conversations with people. It's not necessarily everybody in the household that's able to do that, but it's about looking at the individual families and how that's managed, because there is, quite rightly, we have children whose first language is not English. So certainly there's a match there for that child within that family setting. So sometimes it's looking at, okay, who's going to be the main person who deals with recording and speaking to people when that's necessary. But it might be, you know, and in any household, certain people are better suited to certain tasks. So you should never let that put you off. You should always ring and have that conversation. And because certainly, as Colin said, people tend to put in barriers for themselves and almost be scared of it. And going back to what we said before, when you become a foster carer, part of that becoming process includes training in a group setting with other people, because otherwise it's not just about you. There's two sides to it. There is about you and the checks and all the things we need to do to make sure that someone is an appropriate person to foster children. But the other side of that is getting want to be foster carers applicants together and saying, right, let's look at how fostering looks in your life. Let's look at some case studies, you know, let's look at how that might look. Maybe, you know, someone who's been trafficked into the country, or, you know, so all those kind of different experiences. It might be deaths within families, all those kind of reasons why children might come into the care system, and looking at how would you manage that? What does it look like? Who are the professionals that would be part of your team in that situation? Because sometimes when we talk about training, people think, oh, yes, I'll be a foster carer and then I'll get training. But actually, no, you need some training before you have a child come to stay with you. So those kind of things. So you have what we call kind of pre-approval training. So before you're a foster carer, that looks at those two sides. And people find it really beneficial. Some stuff doesn't make sense until you're a foster carer, because people think, oh, yes, it looks like that. But then obviously when they're caring for a child, there's often that thing where people say, when it first started, that's what she meant, because, and those kind of things come to you, you know. So it's not that expectation that you just go and do it by yourself. You have people like Barry and Colin who support you within your peers, who will give you those handy hints and tips. I know for one of the training we did, a foster carer talked about having smaller children and having cartoons on in the background, because cartoons are the same everywhere. So like little different things, you know, to manage those early processes. You know, we always talk about people, you know, it's a stranger in your home, you know, what's going to happen in the morning? People forget to say, they're like, oh, we've done it, you know, they're in bed, but they forget to say, what can you do in the morning? Every household is different. Can you come downstairs? Do you need to wait so can you get yourself a drink? So some of the really, really simple things are things we really need to think about. Certainly when we describe fostering, sometimes we'll say parenting, you go along and things happen and you deal with them as you go. Fostering, you can kind of flip that on its head, really. We like to try and think of every single thing that could happen and have a plan for it.
I think we're getting more and more questions through. I'm going to try and combine two questions into one, and I'll pose it to Hilary and Colin and Barry. If you have anything to add, that'd be great. So one of the questions is, if someone suffers from health issues, are they still able to foster care? I guess if we split that into physical and mental health. And the other aspect is, if you're a full-time, if you work full-time, does that stop you from being a foster carer?
Okay, the key is really, fostering shouldn't damage a child to be fostered by you, and it shouldn't damage you to foster a child. So it's really about what's going on. If you can do the key things you would need to do for a child, you know, get them to school, undertake their basic needs, those kind of things, then yes, you should be able to foster. And certainly that kind of works in terms of working full time as well. When you think about what are your flexibility, if you had a child in your life, who was your own child, if someone was sick, you would have to leave work and care for that child. You'd have to take them to doctor's appointments, to meetings and things like that, to get braces, all those normal things. The key is you need to be able to meet a child's needs. So we have lots of foster carers who have health needs, and it's about making sure, as I've said, that it's not going to be damaging for them as well. But, so for instance, maybe you have a bad back. So potentially you wouldn't be able to foster babies because there's a lot of bending down, isn't there, with babies and toddlers? You have to be. But for an older child where you don't have to carry them around, you know, that might work really well, because what they need is something different, and you have that something different. You just don't have that kind of back where you're able to bend it round and things. And that's the key. That's why we say ring and have the conversation. don't think that there's these blocks that are going to prevent you, because it might just be kind of the age of children you can foster, for instance.
I think I've seen more cases of foster carers finding out that they can do more than they thought they could do, rather than finding out that they could do less. There's been, confidence is an issue sometimes, and it was for us when we started. Like when we actually went through the fostering process, I couldn't believe I was accepted. I was waiting for someone to say, "Oh no, you're a scally scout, you can't do it," whatever reasons, you know what I mean. And it didn't happen, and I thought, well, maybe I can do it then. And then we did it, and success breeds. You make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But again, if you record and you're in communication with people, and like I say, as long as you welcome people into your life that you wouldn't normally welcome, like social workers and a therapist or a school nurse or whatever it may be, if you're an open book, then we all make those mistakes, so we can all fix and we can all move on, But yes, certainly foster carers could do more than what they thought they could do. That's my experience,
Yeah, I've certainly, I can back that up, because my lad that I've got now that's long term, I've gone and learn, I'm learning the language, I'm learning Bangladeshi, and I've been doing that for a number of years, and that's through the support of initially the interpreter, who runs a school in Manchester, and I take him to that school in Manchester every Saturday when it's on. At the moment it's not because of COVID. We can't do anything for the first school term, but once it's back, I will be there every Saturday. It's one of those things where you put yourself into that situation. You're there for a reason. There was a need for him to learn the language because he was very young when he came to me, and to continue that. And so, because he wouldn't sit and do it by himself with somebody, I said I would take him and I would sit alongside him in that class. And the interpreter told me about doing a class in Manchester, and I go across every week and I do that. And that's the bulk of my Saturday is getting up early, taking him across there, and we'll go and do that language for a couple of hours, and I'm learning the language, the culture. I've been ingrained into the Bangladeshi society in Manchester, that community. I've got lots of friends there. I go to the Assistant High Commission for all cultural events. I get invited, I get personal invites. I've got certificates and little medals because I've done things. I've stood on stage, encouraging, and I've done poems in Bangladeshi. And Fahim's heard me do this as well, So, it's about making the child believe they can do things, no matter what the background. And whatever background you come from, you have got something to offer. Whatever, your ethnicity, whatever your status in life, it doesn't really matter. Your personal circumstances, unless you make that call, you're never going to know. And you might surprise yourself, and have a great life out of it, because for me, it's just a fabulous life. It's a fabulous life.
That's key in terms of that, in terms of looking at what skills you have. That's what we do as part of the assessment. We'll draw out those skills. There is lots of checks and things, and one of those is a medical check to make sure that people are able to do those things. But usually it's more likely looking at what can you do, so you can't do that, but you could do this. So that's why it is so individual, because everybody has individual needs themselves, don't they, in terms of that. But that's very much part of the process of pulling those out, drawing out those strengths and looking at those. Because remember, people like to think that foster carers have never had any kind of difficulties or struggles in their life. The reality is the opposite. If you've had some challenges that you've dealt with, when you're stressed, when you need to ask for help, how resilient you are and things you can cope with. And actually that helps, because I don't know if this is a secret or not, but children can be really hard work at the best of times. Yeah. I mean, you know, and anybody who has their own child and needs or nephew or grandchildren, they can tell you that there's a button and they know where that is. So, you know, looking after children isn't easy in its own right. So for you to actually recognise when you're stressed and say, do you know what, I need some help. I know I need some help. And then have the confidence to say, I need some help. I'm struggling here for whatever reason it is. You know, it might be what Colin can deal with, Barry couldn't, or what Barry can deal with, Colin wouldn't be able to. So it is, that's why. And we keep talking about that team and that support network. That's why, to make sure, because it's not that race, you know, it's someone's life, and we need to, when you're struggling, whether it's you or the child or someone else in your family, you may well need some support to help with that, you know, and to look at what we need moving forward.
Sorry, I just want to just a thought there. I like to tell people to ask questions. Another cliche is there's no such thing as a stupid question in fostering. If it enters your mind that you think maybe I should ask that question, you have to ask that question. You know, and it comes back to recordings as well. If it enters your mind, maybe I should record that, you have to record it. You know, if it's entered your mind, it's done. You have to ask that question then, because it's too important a role that we play for us to go into it blind. You know, so no such thing as a stupid question. Yeah.
Absolutely. The more you know, the more questions there are.
Yes.
But Barry kind of alludes to some kind of personal growth, Colin. I don't know whether through your experience as being a foster carer, how have you changed as a person? What has that meant to your own kind of family dynamics, really?
Yeah, well, family dynamics change all the time. You know, it's to me, it's got to be fluid. You know, your family has to be fluid anyway. But certainly, I don't consider myself to say, well, I am the same person I was 15 years ago. But you know, my gratitude towards the kids that I've looked after is I'm also so much more now. You know, they've managed to give me a lot more understanding of how, you know, what people need and what I need, and when I need to notice what my triggers are as well. Because, you know, a lot of the issues that we have with any people, we put a lot of ourselves into those conflicts or those interests, and it's the same with young people. It's the same with looked after children, you know. And you learn as you go. As long as you're open to learning, you learn as you go. You know, a lot of the conflicts I've had, or any issues or challenges with the young people in my life, I've put stuff into that as well. It's not just about, oh, you know, you've done this, or you're not doing this, or you've done this. It's about how we interact with people, you know. And I certainly consider myself, like I said, the same person I was, but so much more because of these kids, and I'm eternally grateful for it.
Yeah,
excellent. We're coming to very rapidly to the end of our hour now, and so I wish to. Yeah, it's flown by, hasn't it, Jane?
More days.
I'm sure we can get you back on. It's been enthralling, and we have so much more to go over. But normally we like to finish off with 3 top tips that everyone gives us to this sort of thing. And I think this is a really good one. I can see, Colin, you're ready to say something. So, Colin, could I start with you? Your 3 top tips about foster carers for wannabe carers.
I've just given you my top one. Was there's no such thing as a stupid question. So I'm going to have to think of a separate 3 from that now. My 3 top tips, I suppose, would be open-minded. You're not perfect, but you're not supposed to be. You know, always try and improve. Another massive one for me is never be afraid to apologize to kids if you make a mistake. We always make mistakes. Never be afraid to say that was my fault. I'm sorry about that. You know, as foster carers, we tend to think that we've got to be perfect. And I've just forgot my 3rd one. Oh, it was right on the tip of my tongue. I've just forgot my 3rd one. Come back to me in a minute and I'll remember the 3rd one. Sorry.
We'll come back to you. Barry, have you got any tips for the audience?
Yeah. You know, if you think about being a foster carer, make the call, you know, and what I'd like to say is use those things, you know, that's at your disposal. You know, your social workers, your support system, and all your, you know, your training and everything. And that can help make you a better person. That helps to make a young life better. And listen to your kids. You know, at the end of the day, it's their life. It's not yours. It's their life. That's what I tell my lad. It's your life. Tell me what you want. I'll relay that for you to your social worker if you don't want to do it. You know, if you're too timid to do that, I'll do it on your behalf. And you tell me what you want, and if I can't make it happen, I will do my best to get somebody that can make it happen. I can't promise it will, but I'll do my best, and that's what I always do. And you know, for me, it's just about getting the message out there and talking to anybody that wants to talk about fostering anytime. You know, can I give out the number for Lancashire for somebody to ring? If
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to come on to. Please do, Barry.
Yeah, it's 0300 123 6723, and you can also go on the Lancashire website of lancashire.gov.uk/fostering. Make the call, give yourself a great look out, you know, an outlook in life, because you know you can make a massive difference to these children. We all can. I've done it. Colin's done it. Jane's done it in her job. She's seen it, you know, and we all see the results, you know, and we're there. And we'll get it right for these kids, you know. This is what it's about, getting it right for these kids and having that structure and that network behind you to help you do that. And the kids will thrive if you help them, you know, and they'll have a better life. And when they're grown up, might not always thank you when they're younger, you know, but when they grow up, they do get more common sense about them. They realise that these things were done for a reason and they were the right things, and they're so happy. I mean, my lad's got a brother and sister that, you know, 25, and they said to me, which was very nice, you fostered us as well. Even though I didn't, they weren't in my house, you fostered us as well, because I made my home their home. They were welcome every weekend to come and see them when they were in care as well. And that's what it's about. And when they grow into adults, they realise that, and it comes back and it pays you back tenfold. You know, and that's why I keep doing it, because I want to make a difference to kids' lives.
And Jane, have you got any tips as well, Jane? I'm going to come to you, Colin, after.
In case anybody wants to get in touch with us, myself and Colin, Foster Care Associates, and our number is 0800 023 4561. And we all agree, it is the most amazing thing you can do, is have that impact on someone's life. What is more than that? What is more than having something to do with the next generation achieving their goals and being happy and having their own families? And that's about everything we do, and that you're not on your own. You're part of that team of professionals, and you're one of those people. And together, we can do it. Make that call.
Colin, what was that tip you had in mind?
The final tip was be honest with the young people. Be honest as a foster in a household, because children are cleverer than we think. They know more than what we think they know, you know. So, yeah.
Excellent. And yeah, and Barry, I just want to concur with what you said earlier on about you taking so much interest in the Bangladeshi community. As someone who's part of that, obviously, I think you've become basically an honorary citizen with the way you've been welcomed. And I think I can access the High Commissioner via you nowadays, so that's good for my social standing as well. So it's been a pleasure, Barry, and Colin and Jane. And I'm going to leave it to Mehran to thank our guests and introduce what's happening for next week.
Yeah, no, it's great to have all three of you on. You can tell the values. You guys are great ambassadors for the cause of fostering, and I hope people do listen and take heed from your advice. We will put those links and details in our YouTube kind of description, so please do refer to there. But we're happy to take any further comments after the video, so we'll try and support you. We are hoping to cover autism and autism spectrum disorder next week. So we'll have Dr. Karam Sadiq, who's a consultant psychiatrist, as well as my colleague and friend Sean Yang, who's actually dialing in from California. So it should be an interesting conversation on all things to do with autism. So thank you again, and as well as my usual co-host Fahim for another really enlightening discussion on fostering. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite.
Okay, thank you.